Okay, everyone, good morning. Celtic may be back, and we covered the pre-season victory over Queen's Park yesterday on the channel, so check that video out. Today, though, we are continuing to go through our summer signings, and I'm really excited for this one because today we're talking about potentially the big one. I don't know, Kieran Tierney might have something to say about that. There may be more signings to come as well. Certainly hope there are. But Benjamin Nygren is certainly a pretty exciting one. What's he like? Where does he play? How good can he be? We're hoping to maybe delve into some of those areas today with Will Baber, aspiring football scout and analyst, who has taken a particular shine to Nygren. Hi, Will. First of all, thanks for joining us. I know it's getting on there where you are, but thanks for coming on.
Yeah, evening or morning, whatever floats your boat. But yeah, I'm buzzing to be here, so thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I know you've been a man in demand as well. I think that's you're probably finding out about the size of Celtic fan media. You put out one tweet and you have numerous outlets getting in touch with you. You were on the Huddle Breakdown, which is a far more professional setup than here. But yeah, you're doing the rounds.
Yeah, just a little bit, but I've really liked it. It's probably the most interest I've got from the analytical pieces I've done. So yeah, it's quite a nice little step. Quite like it.
So just tell us a little bit about your journey so far. So you want to be a scout or an analyst. That's the dream. And you've already done some stuff with the FA to potentially make it happen.
Aye, so obviously the main goal for me is to be a scout. I think probably the end goal is to move up to like directorship positions, but obviously that's a bit high in the sky sort of thing. So yeah, I'd love to start working as a scout, like a voluntary video scout. That's probably the area I'm best at, I would argue. But yeah, I've looked at getting qualifications. I've tried to get work experience very unsuccessfully, but yeah, I've done the PFSA courses, the FA courses that I can access, for example. So yeah, I'm working hard to get to where I can get to as best as where I can.
Great stuff. Yeah, it's early in the journey, and certainly based on your Nygren stuff, you've got a bright future. So you're an MK Dons fan, FC Nordsjlland as well. So you're probably a Matt O'Reilly fan as well as a Benjamin Nygren one.
Absolutely, yeah. I love Matt O'Reilly. I loved him. It was the first season I was allowed to go properly on my own. The season where Matt O'Reilly really shone. In that, I think it was only 21-22, but obviously I've fan of Don since before then. But yeah, I was a massive fan. He was one of the people that I really looked up to.
Is there similarities between O'Reilly and Nygren in terms of the way they play the game?
Yeah, I'd say mostly aesthetically, in the way they play. Obviously quite almost lengthy, as it were. Quite a long stride length, what have you, but they're also both very fluid on the ball sort of thing, because like especially due to their height. Very hardworking, good presses as well. I think Matt O'Reilly's pressing role at Celtic was different from what it was at Dons. So, and I think that's something that Nygren will be able to pull off pretty easily and really excel at that. So yeah, there's definitely similarities in their styles.
Okay, because I'd taken a brief look at Nygren, and I think I picked out, this just more for people watching it, I picked out Matt O'Reilly and potentially Tom Rogic as similar players, but we can maybe get into that. Your support for Nordsjlland is an interesting one. Where does that come from?
To be honest, it was mostly, I think I was about probably 12 years old maybe, and I was looking to start getting into scouting properly. So I was looking for 3 games, and I think all the Danish Superliga was on OneFootball, all for free. So I sort of got into it from there and settled on SCN as kind of a team that I looked up to.
And you've been following Nygren then for a wee while?
He's been there for 3.5 years, I think it was. So I think he only really burst through as like the key man last season, but I've liked him for quite a while. So yeah, he's properly a sign player.
So I think you online you described his move to Celtic as a perfect fit. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think stylistically, it's probably the perfect fit for him. Obviously, possession-based, high pressing. He's able to push up high into channels, like drift across slightly. I think positionally, I think he'll be similar to Arne Engels. I think from when I watched the cup final the other week, he's like kind of pushing up high, drifting into different pockets or what have you. So that'll be a perfect fit for him. It's in the bit of the pressing structure. He kind of really gets up and suffocates teams and pushes them into corners, what have you, when they try and build up from deep, and he can play a variety of positions. So it's an absolutely perfect fit.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that he's pretty good at pressing, because that's obviously something that's vital for the way we play. So you've you produced this really good scouting report, basically, that you posted online. I think that's the reason so many people have kind of come across it and got in touch. So we can delve into some of these areas potentially, just starting there with the your take on his probable fit. And you kind of mentioned that he's been utilised across the front line and in advanced midfield. I think Brendan Rodgers has already said he can play both. Yeah, what's your thoughts on where he's most likely to fit? Is it in that kind of Arne Engels slightly more central role, but pulling out to the side, or is he a winger?
Well, I would say whilst he's definitely capable of playing as a winger, I think Celtic have more touchline sort of wingers where you're expected to run in behind, cut in size, take people on sort of thing. And I don't think that's quite his game, because whilst he's not slow by any means, he's not quick and explosive over a few yards, so he might not be quite as effective in that role. And I think he would be most effective in that kind of right central midfield slot, where he kind of is able to push out, and if needed, he can fill in as a striker. I think Adamina's probably a bit more of a focal point, but Benji will probably be looking to drop in, pick up the ball in spaces, have runners in behind him. But he can certainly play either role in that sense. But I think that right central midfield slot would be his absolute best fit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the way I saw it. But I had a number of people saying he's a winger, and as I say, Brendan Rodgers has said he can play there. But we do tend to play with real pace. You do mention that he has pretty long strides, so he's like got a pretty good top speed, or certainly not a bad top speed, but he isn't necessarily the kind of like Nicholas Kuhn. I don't know if you've seen much of Nicholas Kuhn, but he's leaving us to go to Como, and he's the right winger, and he's like incredibly quick, as quick a player as we've probably ever had at Celtic. So Nygren isn't that player. He's more of a kind of drifting player, creative player. So it does seem to me like it would be that midfield role.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think his best fit, if he would looking to play out on the wing, was if you had a constant overlap. So I think you probably got that in your fullbacks at the moment, haven't you? The ability to overlap. Yeah, so I think he could fit in as a winger in that sense, but it might lose a bit of that directness and impetus in running in behind and stretching defences.
So just going back to this, in terms of your four-corner analysis, just talk us through some of your kind of main points there, the technical, tactical, physical, psychological stuff.
I'll start with the technical because it's the top left part. So I think he's got a pretty complete technical profile, I'd argue. So he outperforms his metrics in terms of his finishing, for example. His shots are better than the chances that he's given, for example. So the data shows, right. I think it's XG compared to XG on target, for example. I think he outperforms in that metric. So that suggests that his shot quality is quite high. But I think obviously dribbling, he's quite good in tight spaces despite that kind of height that he has. So that's a pretty impressive one. And he's also, I would argue, a pretty good set piece taker. He's only scored one free kick this season, but if you watch his free kicks, they're always pretty close, relatively accurate. So that's another thing that I think your fans were quite excited about, because you haven't really had that in recent years.
How do you know that?
Oh, I think it was about half the comments in the post, but I looked at the stats as well, and I think you've scored one in about 3 years, haven't you?
Yeah, we've not had a great record. We famously had Shinsuke Nakamura back in the day. He could take corners and score free kicks. So maybe Nygren can put some of that forward. I always love like comparisons with players that people will know, and I know there's never like a perfect comparison, but is there like a really well known player out there that's similar at least to Nygren that people will know?
He's quite a unique player. I think you mentioned Kai Havertz, and I quite like that comparison because he's able to drift in. He's able to pick up the ball in spaces. He's quite, as I mentioned, already quite lengthy in his kind of build, almost very ectomorphic. I think it is, if my GCSE knowledge is right. But so yeah, he's quite able to drift in space. Technical despite his size. He's able to alter his stride length quite well, which I think is quite an important attribute for a technical player, especially quite tall one. So yeah, I think Kai Havertz is probably quite a nice comparison that you made.
See, you're going to see him on the half turn quite a lot. I think from the clips I've seen, just receiving the ball, trying to think, probably receiving the ball possibly from centre backs, possibly from like Callum McGregor, and quite good, as I say, on the half turn and then opening up the play. Jimmy, he's an exciting one. He scored a lot of goals for Nordsjlland as well, didn't he?
He's a massive goal scorer. I think the place he's most likely to receive the ball is probably off McGregor, I'd say, but he's also capable of almost dropping into kind of a holding midfield position. Like part of his kind of drifting, he drops into very deep areas at times, just to like kind of more situationally than anything, but he's capable of dropping into those areas, picking the ball up, retaining the ball. And he's got a good level of discipline almost. So he can take risks, but he won't go unnecessarily almost, which is an important attribute. He's got a very varied range of box movement, I'd say. Like sometimes he'll hold off at the edge of the box and look to almost sweep one in sort of thing. He's got a good range of finishes, obviously outside the box, inside the box. In terms of the goals that he scores from inside the box, I think that's quite interesting because whilst he's not got the quickest acceleration, I'd argue, he anticipates situations really well. He reacts to situations quite well, and I think that kind of makes up for it, especially in the kind of box movement situations. He can get in front of a man and knock a ball in or what have you. And yeah, so his goals are very varied, and I think that'll be a massive kind of impact for you.
Is he your kind of Frank Lampard type, arriving late in the box on the end of cutbacks? I'm already imagining Kieran Tierney getting to the byline or Alistair Johnson and cutting it back for Nygren to run onto and slot home.
Oh, I can definitely imagine that kind of cutback cross sort of thing working very well, especially with Tierney on the overlap as well. That'd be beautiful. But yeah, I think I wouldn't compare it to Frank Lampard quite because he kind of starts in. I've got to be honest, I'm too young to remember Frank Lampard kind of tactically, but he kind of starts in like very high areas. So he's kind of more starting in these high areas and maybe dropping off almost.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. From everything that you're saying, he just sounds really like Matt O'Reilly, sounds really like Tom Rogic. So I possibly we're getting some sort of hybrid or probably a slightly different version, but that kind of player. He one thing, especially with Rogic, was that, and you touched on this with Nygren in your report, he kind of has that languid look, just because he's a bit taller, and it kind of, from what I've seen, it seems like everything slows down when he's got the ball, not in a negative way, almost in that he seems like he's got so much time and it probably deceivingly quick, and it looks amazing when it comes off, but maybe sometimes you say it looks like he makes sloppy errors just because of that style that he has. So is that something we might just have to look out for?
Yeah, I think this is one of the few negative areas of my report. So I don't mind the language style. It does look like he's got a proper level of control when he plays, sort of thing. Like you see him receiving it in the middle of the pitch sometimes and just almost holding players off quite easily. Yeah. Just almost backing into him, keeping the ball away, and time does seem to slow down almost, and he's kind of got time to pick out his pass or what have you. But yeah, I think his style almost looks a little bit lax at times. So, and I think this could almost come down to a concentration error. Forgive me if I'm wrong, because it's a bit of an out there kind of claim. But I think this almost drifts into some like certain areas, maybe in front of goal. I think the few penalties he has taken, he's got quite a low percentage of scoring compared to averages, for example.
Don't tell us that, because we've got a horrible penalty record.
Yeah, I think the game I watched to properly closely analyse him and get like all little details for this report, he had 2 penalties, only scored one of them. The second one was horrendous. But yeah, he is a good finisher, but I think his style can almost look lax at times, which could possibly feed into those sort of moments.
Okay, that's interesting. People may or may not know this because he's a creative player, so you don't necessarily think this of creative players, but he captained Nordsjlland a bit last season. I think he touched on that in his Celtic TV interview. So he's a bit of a leader as well.
Yeah, he must. Well, he must be. I obviously don't know him personally, and I can't understand the Danish interpretations in the interviews. But but yeah, he does seem like a leader. He seems to really drive the team forward, sort of thing. You can look at his fan interactions as well. He does seem to like get it, as it were, which is obviously a massive thing to have. And he does seem like a leader on the pitch. So that is a really good detail, and it's probably not something you would see, obviously, as a creator almost a lot of the time.
How that's a very difficult question, but how good do you think he could be? Because I mean, he's 25. I think he's just about to turn 25. In fact, his birthday's today as this video's going out. I think potentially, is that right?
I've seen a lot of accounts of this. To be fair, I think he's 23, turning 24 on the 8th is the account I've had. But I probably should look to the official website for this. But yeah,
well, Wikipedia, which is always a trusted source,
always
Wikipedia
reliable,
always has got him down as the 8th of July, 2001. So that's what, a couple of days. He'll be 24.
Yeah, that's the record I've got.
Okay, so he's what I was saying. How much potential do you think he has? How good can he be? Not just at Celtic, but if he makes another step after that.
If I would choose a move for him right now, it would have been either Celtic or maybe a team in Belgium, for example, like a bit of a natural smaller step up sort of thing, like into Champions League kind of thing. But I think a lot does depend on this move. But I think he genuinely could go very far because he's got like all of the technical attributes. I think maybe physically he might struggle in like, say, one of the top leagues sort of thing. But if that develops over time, I think he's got all the technical attributes, tactical attributes pretty much spot on as well. So he could go far, but I hate scaling players, to be honest with you. I think it's something I've got to work on over time.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, is there anything else, Will? Anything you want to get off your chest? Any major predictions you want to share with the Celtic support on Benjamin?
I'll tell you what, I think the one thing I think you'll see from him in this season is more assists, because I think last season he only had 2 assists. But if you look at his creative numbers, he does actually rank very highly, I think, in the visualization on the thing. He's got kind of, if you look at this kind of high passing accuracy, kind of decent accuracy on his crosses. He has a lot of touches in and around the area. He makes a lot of key passes as well, which suggests that he creates opportunities, but only having two assists kind of doesn't really reflect the player he is in that sort of sense. So I think more assists this season, and he'll keep going with the goals as well. So I think at least 10 goals, 10 assists.
Okay, that's a nice modest prediction, and we'll see how it goes. So not totally sure what the plan is, if he'll be travelling with the team to Ireland for the Cork friendly, or if we'll have to wait until Portugal. But I think he'll certainly be back in training pretty soon. So hopefully see him sooner rather than later. Well, thanks so much for chatting to us. It's been amazing.
Real, thank you very much for having me. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, great stuff, everyone. Thanks for watching. Hope you've learned a bit more about Benjamin Nygren, and I'll return this time tomorrow.